Hello and welcome. Tonight we're going to do during our live Q&A, we're going to talk about as a high school student athlete or the parents of high school student athlete, are you afraid that the portal, the NCAA transfer portal, is stealing all of the opportunities that might have been available to high school athletes in the past? We're going to cover that a lot tonight. And I really want to take the time to allow parents to understand this is something, again, I say it over and over, but I've been doing for almost 4 decades. And so the relationships and the rapport that I have with the college coaches, um, all of them to a man basically tell me we're returning to a time that existed, 20 or 30 years ago. So we're really not making new changes as it relates to college recruiting. We're just going back to the days of allowing physical and mental development, slowing the process down, creating caps that will prohibit teams from stacking or stashing student athletes. And in many ways, it's really a positive for high school student athletes, and we're going to cover that today. So I encourage you first and foremost, before we go further, really want to stress to you as parents and athletes, subscribe to this channel. It's free. That part of it is free. Subscribe. You'll get notified whenever I add some content or have a college coach join me. And also, I encourage you, if you're parents and you really feel frustrated and you feel lost, I want you to take the time to join the membership. The membership is $20 a month. You're going to get elite content from all facets of youth sports, youth baseball, youth softball, particularly. My coach's corner segments, my courses, my books, my audio books. There'll be content for young pitching, young hitting, older hitting, infield play, outfield play, catching, so forth. And we're going to hear from some of the biggest names within their space. For instance, we got Trey Hanneman from a hitting perspective. We're going to have catching coaches. We're going to talk to the Cressies and the Moffats and the Fairchilds with regard to strength and nutrition. Tamara Seaman with regard to mental performance, which now more than ever is a very, very big part of being a high school athlete, is the mental discipline, the mental challenges and hurdles and obstacles, and how to get over, under, around those and be your best mentally as well as physically each and every day. All of that for $20 a month, and also I encourage you to, create a Bluebook profile, baseball Bluebook on any app, Google, Apple, etc. Create your profile, because every coach I talk to now more than ever, they're looking for resources to be able to find high school athletes, all athletes, whether they be currently high school athletes and potentially future college athletes. So go ahead and create that profile. Make sure you're putting some really good video in there. Let me help you with an evaluation that we can put on your profile. All that's part of the Baseball Blue Book. So now, what I want to encourage families to truly understand and begin to embrace is this process now requires families and, more importantly, athletes to take the 8th through 11th grade years to prepare. Now, a lot of that is going to just be done naturally with Mother Nature. Mother Nature is going to, your body is going to change. You're going to see your young athletes become mature athletes, wider shoulders, thicker lower half, legs, glutes, things like that. So, Mother Nature typically handles a lot of that. But what you can do to help is really 5 key points that we're going to talk about tonight with regard to how to really prepare. In that first area that every coach, and we hear it from almost every coach, is the ability to be physically ready, because in the locker rooms now, and whether we're talking, and I'm talking 4-year schools for the most part, NAIA and NCAA, those are the two governing bodies of college athletics with regard to 4-year academic institutions. And as we talk today, you have 5 years to get 4 years of athletic, to utilize 4 years of athletic eligibility. And so it used to be the college freshman, maybe sophomore year, coaches would have a developmental program where a lot of the strength and a lot of the physical demands that were going to be placed on college athletes were kind of created and implemented during those younger years, in some cases redshirt. But now you really want to start to have a plan, and so when I'm working with families, one of the first things we do is create an individual plan. I think we as parents sometimes want to trust or entrust our student athletes, to former college athletes or people within the travel industry or the youth baseball industry. And while that is good, it's not a complete, what I call totally polished profile. So, there are things within the strength world, nutrition, hydration, sleep. We've talked about that at length, but we need to begin to recognize our resources, meaning time and obviously financially, need to be more in line with the direction our student athlete, or you feel as a parent that your student athlete is hoping to ascend to, whether that's high school varsity plus potentially college, or college potentially professional. And a lot of that does, in fact, begin from that eighth grade through that junior year. So it really begins, number one, with strength. Now, you don't want to just do the football program, the workout world, or Planet Fitness or YMCA. You want to have what we've talked about, repeatedly, which is a evaluation intake movement screen. We call it many different things, but we want to see where your athlete is today, where they're capable of going. We had Ben Fairchild on a couple weeks ago, and if you haven't watched that interview, strongly, strongly encourage you to watch it, because one of the interesting dynamics that Ben brought up was at 12 through 15, they can do a movement screen on young pitchers and be able to tell if they're going to be able to be a pitcher in high school or college based on metrics like internal, external rotation, arm lay down, things that are kind of over some of our heads. But with regard to guys like Cressy and Ben Fairchild, these are things that you want to get ahead of. And so that where your athletes are deficient or tight, and then have a program that is written specifically and monitored specifically for your student athlete. I think a lot of times we think about lessons, hitting lessons, pitching lessons, fielding lessons, and those are all really good. And we're going to get to that in a second. But it all begins and ends with regard to high school, high level high school and college athletics, with the strength, which naturally also coincides with the foot speed. The stronger your lower half, the faster your lower half will move, or the stronger your lower half will move, which will, equate to speed. So always begin your process with regard to recruiting, and try to look beyond the whole portal thing. Like, that's out of our control. We can't control that. That's going to be, there'll be a commission that'll be established. That's an NCAA thing. NAIA doesn't have all of these restrictions. They also don't deal with name, image, and likeness. So there might be a cleaner path with regard to NAIA, which again only has two levels, 1 and 2, divisions 1 and 2. And once you have that strength routine and discipline down, we move on to number 2, which is self-driven or self-done repetitions for skill. And so we don't want to leave our skill set development solely dependent upon instruction or lessons, practice time with coaches. We want to have some individual time, whether that's in our backyard, a local playground, possibly inside a gym, or even a basement here in the Northeast or Midwest. And you want to get your skill sets. You want to work on them on a daily basis. That doesn't mean you have to go throw 100 pitches every day. It means taking ground balls via wall ball. It means hitting with a broomstick, or anything like that, with acorns or rocks or wiffle balls or small wiffle balls or tennis balls, things that you have access to and that are plentiful that you can kind of get your repetitions in. Teach your hands, teach your hands and your eyes to work together. That's really what baseball demands, is that the eyes trust the hands trust the eyes, and you kind of gain a level of instinctual reactions that you don't really think about, and you just trust and believe in your preparation. So the more your younger athletes are doing things on their own with regard to practice habits, the more they'll be self-driven. If we leave this solely to an instructor, during maybe 1 or 2 lessons a week, we become overly robotic and we don't really become athletic, and athletic skills become instinctual skills. And repetition, again, always leads to retention. And there's no such thing. We want to make sure we avoid negative repetitions. In other words, every time we throw a ball, there has to be an intent, there has to be a target. Every time we feel the ball, we have to kind of feel that rhythm, the pre-step and the driving through the ball with our feet. Our feet field a baseball as much as our hands and our eyes do. And so catching bullpens, if you're a catcher, especially at a young age, don't doom and gloom if somebody says, "Can you catch some bullpens?" And in fact, look at that as an exciting opportunity. Challenge yourself to catch older athletes. We become too accustomed to 8U, 9U, 10U. And, you want to catch some of those 13 to 15-year-old bullpens when you're in that 11 or 12-year-old window. And then when you're in that 13 to 15-year-old window, you want to start catching those varsity athletes, that are in that 17, 18-year-old window. And obviously, when you're in high school, catch some college or pro guys if you can. All of that's going to add up to, sharpening your skills on your time and really making yourself accountable with regard to skill set development. Number three, and I say this a lot recently because I really think it's pertinent to today's world. When we start talking about name, image, and likeness, and again, that's only going to be applicable for maybe a few percent of Division I athletes. It's not going to be something that I think a lot of athletes think they're going to get wealthy or create a substantial income stream. For Division III and II, it might mean something as simply as free food, promoting, pizza or fast food places or equipment companies, things like that. And for the elite Division I athletes, it's going to be obviously coming from the school itself out of the new. Uh, when they're doing revenue share in the 22.5 million, and some of these schools will create their own individual collectives that'll pay athletes a little bit more than the going rate at some of the other schools. But it all boils down to creating a brand. And so that brand, and when I say that, a lot of athletes kind of get thrown off, and I'm like, listen, here's the deal. You have to understand your social media and the content that you choose to put out and promote, whether you repost somebody else's, you have to understand that's going to give pause by adults that that might not be the type of content we want to be associated with. And you want to have a brand of obviously hard worker, obviously academic orientated, obviously positive, material and information that you're posting. So you really want to pay attention to, small things you post, things you like, things you repost. Maybe being around in certain social circles where things might not be going that you may be proud to be a participant in. So you have to really understand not only what you're doing, but what's going on around you and begin to recognize that and take that into consideration. Number four, and I just touched on it a little bit, is academics. You don't have to be a straight A student. And in fact, if I were to be completely honest, in my many years of working with families, academics, I will always tell them, hey, go get a letter of recommendation from a teacher, a professor, a faculty member where you got a C plus, but you had to work your butt off to get that C plus. Sometimes the world strives for perfection, 4.0 and 1600 SAT, 36 ACT. In fact, a lot of perfect scores get rejected at a lot of colleges because there's no community service, there's no interaction with regard to student body, whether it's running for class office, whether it's being a leader within the foreign exchange club or theater, or maybe a school radio station. Being an engaged student over and above just your grades really shows potential schools, colleges, admissions offices a little bit about who that athlete, that student is, and what type of interaction and engagement they'll have on a college campus. So, your transcript should be more than just test scores and grades. It should be more about your involvement within the student body and as well as your interactions with the faculty. Maybe you're doing community service like neighborhood cleanup, things like that. All of those are going to add up to tell a story that colleges are going to want you to be a part of. So recognize that over and above athletic money, academic money can come from a variety of different sources. And it's not always just going to go to the 4.0 and the high test score athletes or students. It's going to go to those students that really, truly embody a positive, kind of ability to be a part of the campus, the culture of the campus on a social level as well as an athletic and academic level. Last but not least, I keep talking with a lot of these college coaches. Just recently talked to Justin Hare at Ohio State. Spent some time with Keith Gorman at South Carolina Aiken, and a lot of these coaches now are taking the time to talk at length about mental toughness. Dave Serrano talks about it all the time at Johnson University. In order to be a college caliber student athlete, you really want to take the time to develop those routines and those disciplines at the high school level that will naturally translate to the college level. You don't want to spend a lot of time strictly focused on tee work, at bats, things that are baseball centric, and kind of not give way and not give time to think about, okay, how do I learn how to flush negative thoughts or negative events so that they don't affect my next opportunity or my next ability to play? And having that mental discipline to, hey, I have to get a workout in before my game, so I might have to get up earlier. I might have to go to bed earlier. I'm going to have to make sure I'm hydrated. We have a 6-hour flight across country. We're going to have a game that night and the time change going east to west. So I want to get ahead of that. So mental discipline. So again, all of these topics, these 5 topics really, and I see a couple of questions coming in, and I am going to get to those here in a second, but they all add up. So when you're as a parent and as an athlete, and you're thinking, wow, this portal really is negative, and how am I going to get recruited as a 25 high school graduate, 26, 27? Is this going to affect me as a 28? All good questions. But if you plan out accordingly and you don't wait until your senior year. In the 8th through 11th grade years, you're using those years to build the resume, to really create and execute your plan. And that's really something that I take the time to do. This year, worked with 8 families. All 8 graduated and they did a post grad year. But we started talking about it 2 or 3 years ago. And now all those boys that just graduated from post grad are now heading to college this upcoming fall of 2025. And I must tell you, all 8 of those young athletes are now going to school physically, mentally, academically, and obviously athletically prepared for Lehigh, for Air Force Academy, for Amherst, for Bates, Vanderbilt. These are the types of opportunities that I want parents to understand, and more importantly, student athletes. Don't focus on the negative. Don't focus on the, oh man, the portal's killing high school athletes. There's nothing we can do. Yes, there is, but you can't wait till the last minute and try to, work your way in. You kind of have to have a proven plan that's individually based for your student athlete. So I really want to say thank you, and I do see the question, and I'm going to answer that privately, Bill, that I see to my right here, because I think it is a specific question related to your student athlete. But I want to say thank you to all those that take the time to join me each and every Tuesday. I really feel that this is an integral part of helping inform and educate parents and student athletes. And if you have any questions, go ahead and email me at walter@coachbeede.com. Let me answer those for you. Let me get you involved and up to speed on a few areas that might be a little gray. I appreciate all of the questions that continue to come in each and every week on X and YouTube and Instagram, TikTok, etc. But go ahead and make sure you subscribe on the way out. Subscribing is free. You just click a button and you're subscribed. Trying to get to 20,000 subscribers by the year end. We're almost at 18,000. So I really could use the help. Also, if you like this content, can you give me a thumbs up? Just go down, hit it right now before you leave, hit the thumbs up button. Most of all, strongly consider becoming a member. A membership is $20 a month. You and I are going to get to interact one-on-one in a stream. We're going to get to evaluate your student athlete, and hopefully we'll get a nice plan created for you and your athlete, and you are able to execute it over the next few years. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to talking with you again next Tuesday. Keep the questions coming in.